Case 1, The Bedroom Ambush. Part 1, Routine Call. I used to believe in the concept of a quiet night shift. Everyone did, at least during their first year on the job. There's something naive and almost comforting about assuming that darkness behaves itself. That people sleep. That terrible things wait for daylight. But County Durham doesn't follow rules. Neither does whatever moves silently behind other people's walls. It was just past midnight when control passed the job to me. A 999 call, one scream, then nothing. The neighbor, Mrs. Catamole of number 12, insisted it came from number 14 Coastal Row, detached 1930s semi-perched above the cliff line like a crooked tooth. The North Sea wind was throwing fog across the estate in thick, rolling sheets. Probably a telly left on, my sergeant muttered as he scribbled something on a clipboard. But control had tagged the call as possible domestic in progress. Which meant I was going. My name is PC Liam Hargreaves, 26, 2 years in uniform. I still wore the job like a badge rather than armor. I still believed routine existed. I drove the squad car through the sleeping streets of Seaham, tires fizzing on damp tarmac. The fog swallowed the beams of my headlights in white silence. By the time I pulled up beside number 14, the air smelled of cold salt and something older, like metal left too long in the rain. The house was dark. Dead dark. No hallway lamp. No bedroom glow. And yet, one detail punched through the gloom like a warning. Upstairs. Far right window. A single curtain twitched. Not wind. Not random. A smooth, deliberate vertical shift. Someone had been watching the street. I keyed my radio. Hargreaves on scene at Coastal Row. No visual confirmation of disturbance. Requesting backup to attend. The reply crackled a moment. Nearest unit is 15 minutes. Proceed with caution. 15 minutes is an ocean when someone is screaming. I approached the front door. The letterbox rattled softly in the wind, like breath. I knocked. Police. Hello? Anyone inside? Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. It wasn't until I stepped back that I noticed something wrong. The front garden path was wet. Not rain wet. More like someone had walked through dew recently, individual footprints pressed into the gravel, leading around the side of the house. I followed the trail, torch in hand, heart thudding against my vest. The rear garden was fenced, cramped, choked by a crooked clothesline and a rusted swing seat. The back window, the kitchen window, was open just an inch. But here was the part that made my scalp tighten. Glass was inside, not outside. Shards glittered on the kitchen carpet. Forced from within. Someone had opened the window to get out, not to get in. Or tried to. I radioed again. Possible break from inside. I'm entering the property. And then, stupidity or duty, depending who you ask, I climbed through the window. My boots hit the carpet without sound. The air inside was warm, heavy, still. As if the house had swallowed its own breath. Kitchen surfaces were spotless, everything neat, everything placed with compulsive precision. Except the knife block. That stood on the counter like an accusation. One slot empty. My torch swept across the countertops. A mug half filled with tea. A phone charger. A set of keys. Nothing that screamed struggle. Then something thudded faintly overhead. Not loud. Just a shift. A tremor in the floorboards. Someone was upstairs. I whispered into my radio, movement on first floor, then stepped toward the hallway. The staircase was narrow, steep, and carpeted a dull burgundy. Halfway up, I caught the faint smell of iron. The sort of metallic tang that crawls into your throat. Blood. I'd learn later how much of it there was. At the top of the stairs, a landing stretched left and right, 4 doors. 3 were shut. Locked shut, I checked by gently trying each handle. The 4th door, the one at the end of the corridor, hung slightly ajar. The crack was thin but enough to spill a faint sliver of blue light from a phone screen inside. I pushed the door open with 2 fingers. The bedroom looked like a crime scene waiting to be noticed. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, washing the walls in cold grays. The duvet on the bed was bunched, and beneath it, a woman lay face down, hair draped over her shoulders, a dark pool spreading beneath her ribs. Every few seconds her body shuddered weakly, a wet, rattling exhale leaving her lips. "Sarah Whitlock?" I asked, voice barely above a breath. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. She was alive. Barely. I moved to her side, checking her pulse, faint, thready. My gloves were slick with blood within seconds. "Hargreaves requesting ambulance, Category 1, I said into the radio. "Victim alive with multiple stab wounds." I repeat, victim is alive. The silence that followed felt too complete. Because something in the room didn't fit. My eyes scanned the wardrobe. Its sliding doors were open. Empty. Not house tidy, empty. Recently vacated, empty. And then, crack. A floorboard. Directly behind me. Every instinct I had, every lesson hammered into me during training, screamed the same command. Do not turn your back on the victim. Do not turn your back on the door. Do not turn your back. But I didn't need to turn. I already knew. The sound had come from the floor. Low. Close. Hidden. I dropped to my knees and lifted the edge of the duvet so the torch beam could slip underneath the bed. A face stared back at me. A balaclava soaked in sweat. Eyes wide and bloodshot. Hands gripping a knife, the missing knife from the block downstairs. "Daz Whitlock," I breathed. Darren, drop the weapon. He didn't move. Didn't blink. In that cramped space, his voice was a whisper so soft it might have been a thought. "She cheated." His fingers flexed on the knife handle. "I waited 4 hours for her to wake up," he whispered, breath fogging against the balaclava. 4 hours for her to apologize. I kept my voice steady, though my pulse was punching panic into my throat. "Daz, listen to me. Sarah's alive. She needs help. You need to put the knife down and come out slowly." His eyes filled with something that wasn't anger so much as raw, cracked grief. "You think I didn't give her a chance?" he hissed. "I called her. I called 17 times. The last one." He laughed, a strangled, broken sound. 37 seconds before she screamed. I didn't dare shift weight. Any movement could set him off. Instead, I kept him talking, anything to stall, anything to anchor him. "You're scared, Daz. I get it. But you don't want to make this worse." He tilted his head, the knife's blade catching the torchlight. "I already did." His body tensed. Then, boots thundered downstairs. A shout, "Armed police! Back up!" Finally. Daz flinched at the noise, just enough for me to push backward, drawing my baton, blocking the gap between him and Sarah. The door burst open as firearms officers swept in, laser dots bathing the room in red constellations. "Show us your hands," they ordered. For a heartbeat, Daz seemed to consider lunging. But then his shoulders sagged. He slid the knife across the carpet and crawled out slowly, hands raised, breath shaking. They cuffed him. Dragged him to his feet. He didn't struggle. His eyes never left Sarah. "She should have apologized," he murmured. "Sarah survived. Barely." In the ER, she drifted in and out, telling officers between gasps that she woke with Daz sitting beside her, knife in hand, just watching. He'd already stabbed her by the time she realized what was happening. The kicker? Her phone was found under her pillow. 17 missed calls. The last one placed 37 seconds before her scream. I should have moved on from that case. Should have filed the report, processed the emotion, and reset for the next shift. Instead, I went home and checked under my bed. Then did it again. And again. And I've never stopped. Because the truth is simple. Monsters don't always break into your home. Sometimes they are already inside it, waiting for you to sleep. Part 2, the telltale minutes after. People think the worst part of an attempted murder is the attack itself. They are wrong. The worst part is the after, the stretch of time when everything is technically under control, but your body hasn't realized it yet. When the adrenaline is leaking out of your muscles like battery acid, and every sound becomes a threat. The paramedics were still 5 minutes out. Firearms had carried Daz outside, marched him across the garden like some limp-jointed puppet with dead eyes. And suddenly I was alone in the bedroom again, alone with Sarah's blood drying on my gloves and the echo of Daz's whisper still vibrating in my skull. She cheated. I waited 4 hours for her to wake up. My torch lay on the floor, still casting its narrow beam under the bed. I picked it up out of habit, even though I knew he wasn't there anymore. Still, I checked. You always check. Sarah's breaths were shallow, wheezing. Each one sounded like it was being dragged across broken glass. I knelt beside her again. Sarah? Can you hear me? Her eyelids flickered, but no words came out. Just a small sound, a wet choke. You're safe now, I told her. A lie we tell victims as much as ourselves. I pressed a fresh dressing against her wounds. The blood seeped through instantly. 6 stab wounds. He'd been targeting her ribs and back, not random, not frenzied. Controlled. That was the part that made my hands shake. Most offenders in domestics lash out in panic or rage. They flail. They lose themselves. But Daz? He waited. He stabbed with purpose. He watched her bleed. And then he hid, silent, beneath the bed like a man clocking in early for work. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Not rushing, slow, deliberate. Firearms had already gone. Paramedics, maybe. But when the shape entered the doorway, it wasn't a paramedic. It was PC Jane Morley, my age but already twice as composed. She scanned the room with a frown. Liam? You all right? You look like I crawled out of a crime scene, I muttered. You are in a crime scene. She knelt beside Sarah with me, eyes narrowing at the wounds. He did a number on her. 6 so far. Jane shook her head. We had Daz Whitlock in custody last year. Drunk and disorderly. Was moody, but never violent. People like to believe violence has a fixed shape, a predictable category. But it mutates. Evolves. One day someone's just angry, the next day they are waiting under a bed with a knife. I glanced at the wardrobe. The open space. The emptiness. He was in there, too, I said. At some point. Doors wide open. Probably watching her sleep. Jane's face paled. Jesus Christ. Yeah. We stayed like that for another minute, the two of us crouched in the soft blue light of Sarah's phone screen, waiting for the ambulance, waiting for time to catch up with us. Finally, we heard the voice from downstairs. Ambulance service. 2 paramedics, both young, both wearing the same hollow expression you get when you walk into a room that already feels haunted. I stepped back to let them work. They were quick, efficient, calm, everything I wasn't. One monitored her vitals while the other prepped a cannula. She's lost a lot of blood, one murmured. Pressure's almost gone. She'll make it, though? I asked, stupidly. They didn't answer. They just loaded her onto the stretcher. That silence hit harder than anything Des said. Once they took her away, Jane and I remained inside, clearing the scene for CID. There's something surreal about walking around someone's house after something like that. Ordinary objects suddenly feel obscene. A bowl of cereal left half-eaten on the counter. A lavender candle on the windowsill. A stack of unopened post. And then the little details that prick your skin. A mug on the table with smears of red on the handle, hers. A shoe overturned in the hallway. A hair tie snapped clean in two. Jane opened a drawer in the living room. "Look at this," she said. Inside were printed text messages. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every line highlighted, dates circled. Some torn from notebooks, some crumpled then smoothed out again. All of them from Daz. He printed them. I asked. He annotated them, Jane corrected. "Look, lies, she's ignoring me, not normal." All written in the margins. I stared at the pile. He planned this. Jane didn't answer immediately. She just exhaled. He escalated, she said finally. Straight up the ladder. CID arrived 20 minutes later. DI Roundtree took one look at the room and muttered, "Bloody hell," then ordered us downstairs. I gave my initial statement while standing in Sarah's tiny kitchen, the one where I'd first noticed the missing knife. The detective took notes, but she didn't interrupt. Her eyes kept drifting toward the window. "You said the glass was broken outward," she clarified. "Yes. Shards on the carpet. So, attempted escape. Or forced retreat," I said. "He might have tried to leave and changed his mind." She stopped writing. That thought hung between us. It was the worst possibility, the idea that Daz had opportunity to flee, but stayed to watch. Stayed to hide. Stayed because he wanted Sarah to wake up and look into his eyes when she saw the knife. Roundtree closed her notebook. "All right, Hargreaves. You did well. Go get a breather before the formal." But I didn't leave straight away. I kept looking back up the staircase. Something gnawed at me. So I walked up again. Back to the bedroom. Back to the silence. CID hadn't touched the scene yet. The duvet lay half pulled back. A smear of blood marked where my knee had been. The air was still heavy, almost humid, like breath trapped in the walls. I crouched again and shone my light under the bed. Not because I thought he was there, he wasn't, but because habit had become compulsion. Because once you find someone under there once, you don't ever really stop checking. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A wet ring on the wooden floorboards. Oval-shaped. Slightly darker than the surrounding wood. Not blood. Sweat. The spot where Daz had been lying. Where his head had rested. He'd been under there for hours. Hours. My stomach twisted. How long had he been listening? How long had he been planning the moment Sarah woke? How long had he been watching me while I leaned over her, unaware that he was inches from my boots? I stood up too quickly, head spinning. Jane leaned in through the doorway. "You all right?" "Yeah. Just need air," I lied. But the truth was simpler. I had never been that close to dying without realizing it. Outside, the fog had thickened, rolling over the garden in pale strands. Firearms had Daz against the patrol car, head down, balaclava removed. He looked small now. Thin. Unimpressive. Deceptively ordinary. When he glanced up and saw me, his lips twitched. Not a smile. Something flatter. A recognition, maybe. A shared room, shared air, shared heartbeat. As they pushed his head down and guided him into the back of the vehicle, he said one thing. "She should have apologized, you know." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I could still see the sweat stain under the bed. Still hear the creak behind me. Still feel the moment he nearly lunged. The officers shut the car door, and the fog swallowed the flashing lights as the vehicle pulled away. I thought that would be the end of it. But the night wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. As I headed back toward the house, my radio crackled sharply. "Hargreaves, control. Priority message." I pressed the button. "Go ahead. The neighbor from number 12 has called in again. She says she heard another sound from hash 14, just now." My blood ran cold. Another sound? Affirmative. She said it sounded like someone moving. But everyone had already left. Everyone alive, anyway. I turned back toward the dark house. And for the second time that night, I stepped inside, heart pounding, unsure what waited in the silence. Part 3, What Stayed Behind. I remember standing in the doorway of number 14 Coastal Row for the second time that night, feeling like an idiot for believing the worst was over. The house was dark again, emptied of officers, paramedics, movement, but something about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet articulate. The call from Mrs. Catamole echoed in my head. I heard something move. In the bedroom. I swear it. I wanted to radio back and say, it's trauma. It's your nerves firing at shadows. But you don't second-guess people on nights like that. Not after what I'd seen under the bed. So I stepped inside. The same wet footprints still glistened faintly on the front path. The air inside was colder now, the kind of cold that sneaks under your uniform and clings to your spine. I flicked on my torch. The beam cut through the hallway. Silence. Stillness. Not safety, just stillness. Control, Hargreaves re-entering number 14. Conducting a secondary sweep. Static. Then. Received. Backup is 7 minutes out. 7 minutes. In a house where someone had spent 4 hours waiting under a bed. I climbed the stairs again. Each step groaned differently this time. Not loud, just wrong, like the house remembered what had happened and was trying to tell me something. When I reached the landing, the bedroom door swayed slightly in the draft. I approached slowly, felt my heartbeat rise, felt the edges of panic trying to wedge into my ribs. It's strange, earlier that night, the bedroom had been terrifying because Daz was there. Now it was terrifying because he wasn't. I pushed the door open. The room was a smear of shadows and moonlight. CID tape fluttered on the bed frame. The duvet was pulled back where paramedics had worked. Blood had dried into a dark tide mark on the sheets. But that wasn't what made me pause. It was the wardrobe. Earlier, its doors were left open. Wide, even. Now, they were closed. Perfectly closed. Like someone had lined them up exactly, top to bottom. I stared at them for a long moment. This is stupid, I whispered to myself. He's in custody. You saw him get driven away. But fear doesn't care about logic. It listens to doors that close on their own. It listens to neighbors who swear they heard something. It listens to the part of your brain that remembers the sweat stain under the bed. I reached for the wardrobe handle. My fingers hesitated. Then I yanked it open. Nothing. Just coats. Shoes. A laundry basket. My exhale shook out of me like a laugh. I swung the door shut. And froze. Behind it, hidden in the narrow gap between the wardrobe and the wall, taped low near the floor, was a phone. Black. Screen down. A cable snaked behind the baseboard. I crouched, lifted it carefully. The lock screen lit up. Recording ongoing. 47 minutes and 29 seconds. A nearly 50-minute recording. My stomach hollowed out. Daz didn't just hide. He recorded. He recorded the entire attack. He recorded himself waiting. He recorded Sarah's breathing, the creaks of the bed, the moment she woke, the moment he spoke. And then, God, he recorded me. My footsteps. My voice. My breath as I leaned over the bed, unaware he was inches away. I ended the recording. Saved it. Put the phone in an evidence bag. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been listening to me from inside that bedroom long before I even knew Sarah existed. That's when the quiet voice broke the silence. Liam? I spun, hand on my baton. It was Jane, standing in the doorway, out of breath. Jesus, Jane. Control sent me. They said you were rechecking the property alone. She looked at my face, then at the room. You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up the phone. This wasn't here before. Her eyebrows lifted. Hidden phone. Recording for 47 minutes. Jane swore under her breath. He was documenting it. Like a ritual. No. Not documenting. I swallowed. Waiting. She glanced once at the bed, at the blood soaked into the sheets, and then at the wardrobe. I saw her throat tense as she swallowed. Liam, are you all right? No. No, I wasn't. But you never say that after your first near-fatal job. You pretend you're made of the same stuff as the veterans. You pretend you're steel. Yeah, I lied. Just too much adrenaline still. We sealed up the house, handed the evidence over to CID, and went back to the station to start the paperwork that always comes at the worst possible time. I was halfway through typing my statement when D.I. Roundtree came over, face-pinched, holding a folder. CSI phoned. Early findings from the house. I straightened. They found something under the carpet in the bedroom, she said, tapping her nail on the report. Old marks. Scratch lines. What kind of scratch lines? Clawing. My mouth dried. From the struggle? Roundtree shook her head. No. Wrong angle. These marks came from inside the bed frame, from someone lying underneath, dragging nails upward. How long ago? We don't know, she said. But they are not from tonight. Old scratch marks. Under the bed. Someone had hidden there before. Maybe more than once. I sat down slowly. Roundtree sighed. Liam, take the rest of the night. You look. I'm fine. You're not. She left it at that. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove to the cliffside car park and let the fog swallow the patrol car. The engine ticked in the silence. My hands rested on the wheel, still trembling. I replayed everything in my head, the scream, the bedroom, the knife, the whisper. And the worst part wasn't the violence. It was how silent he'd been. How patient. How deliberate. The kind of silence that suggests a man had rehearsed this. Sat there, breathing shallow, imagining the moment someone else finally joined the room. Imagining me. I kept hearing the tiny creak behind me, the one I ignored until it was too late. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sweat-soaked balaclava peering from the darkness, inches from my boots. The world didn't feel safe anymore. Beds didn't feel safe. Silence didn't feel safe. My radio crackled suddenly, making me jump. Hargreaves? You clear? It was Control. I forced my voice steady. Clear. Just wanted to update you. Sarah Whitlock is stable. She's out of emergency surgery. Expected to survive. Relief hit me so hard I had to breathe through it. What about Daz? In holding. Forensics matched prints from the wardrobe phone to him. A pause. He's not saying a word. Of course he wasn't. Some men don't confess. Confession is noise. And men like Daz Whitlock live in silence. I went home at 5:17 a.m. My flat was still. Too still. I turned on every light. Then walked into my bedroom. The duvet on my bed was rumpled from that morning. My wardrobe door was ajar by about 2 inches. It had been like that when I left, I was sure. I walked over and pulled it open. Just clothes. Then I crouched. Slowly. Carefully. I lifted the edge of the bed. Empty. Nothing but dust and a lost charger cable. But it didn't matter. That night changed me. I sleep with the wardrobe closed now. Always. I check under the bed every single night. Twice if I've had a long shift. And if the floorboard creaks behind me when I'm in someone's house. I don't ignore it. I don't tell myself it's nothing. Because of something I learned in that bedroom, something that stayed with me ever since. Monsters don't always break into your home. Sometimes they love you. Sometimes they know the layout. Sometimes they wait under your bed for 4 hours. And sometimes They are the quietest ones in the room. I've been a police officer long enough to know when a case feels closed on paper but stays open inside your head. This one, this girl, this room, this scene, never actually ended the night we cleared the apartment. It stayed with me. It followed me home. And I've come to believe that whatever was in that room wasn't finished with us, not by a long shot. But I'll start where the report says the final phase begins, the extraction and the anomalous events after the suspect's disappearance. 1. The extraction. We moved the victim out at 2:03 a.m. She was barely conscious, drifting in and out, mumbling like someone caught in a fever dream. Her breathing was shallow, but she was stable enough to move. The paramedics strapped her down, loaded her into the ambulance, and got her on oxygen. I rode with them until halfway to the hospital, then transferred back to the scene as protocol required. But even in the ambulance, something stayed wrong. The girl's eyes kept drifting to the far corner of the vehicle, the empty corner. Every time I followed her gaze, there was nothing. Nothing except a faint set of scratches on the interior wall, like someone had dragged a fork or nails down the metal panel at some earlier point. She whispered something I didn't catch. One of the paramedics leaned closer to her and asked, "What was that?" She tried again, voice shredded into a rasp. He didn't leave. That was the first moment that forced a chill right down my spine. Because I had already written the suspect off as gone, escaped through a window, dropped off the fire escape, vanished into the alley. Yes, the disappearance was fast, unnatural even, but I still wanted to believe he was flesh and blood. Someone who could be found, caught, locked up. But the way she said that, and the way her eyes traced the empty space like she saw someone crouched there, it shook me. We reached the hospital. I handed the nurse the report notes I'd started, told her to call me if the girl woke up again, then headed back out into the night. I was only gone from the scene for maybe 22 minutes, but the whole atmosphere had changed by the time I got back. 2. The residual disturbance. That's the term the department uses unofficially, for lack of a better word. I've experienced only 2 in my career, and this was the second. When I re-entered the apartment, there was a weight in the air, like humidity, but more concentrated, almost like walking into a room where something had just happened but left before you arrived. The other officers on site were shaken, visibly. One of them, Ramirez, kept rubbing his forearms like he was cold, even though the heater was on. "Something's wrong with the room," he told me. Ordinarily, I'd chalk that up to nerves or imagination. But then he handed me his bodycam, already recording. "Watch," he said. I stepped aside and played the footage from the moment right after I had left for the hospital. The room was quiet at first, officers cataloging the scene, photographs being taken, a few low conversations. Then something happened that wasn't part of any normal crime scene. A soft, almost inaudible shuffling came from the closet. Every officer in the room on the footage heard it at the same moment. They all turned, weapons half drawn but still holstered. The closet door was closed. The sound came again, heavier, like weight shifting on old wood. Bodycam footage doesn't capture emotion, but I swear you can feel tension climbing like a tight wire inside that tiny bedroom. One of the younger officers, Tran, stepped forward and pulled the closet door. Inside? Nothing. But the audio picked up something else, something subtle. A whisper. A single, breathy exhale. "Stay." I paused the footage. Ramirez looked at me. We all heard it. Every one of us. I didn't say anything. Didn't know what to say. Protocol doesn't cover whispered commands coming from empty closets. I rewound and replayed the clip again. Same thing. Same faint whisper. Same empty closet. But there was something else I noticed, something that tightened every muscle in my body. The whisper wasn't recorded from any point in the room. It wasn't directional. It was inside the MIC. Like the bodycam didn't pick up a sound in the environment, it picked up something exhaling directly into it. 3. The interview. The girl regained consciousness later that morning. She was shaking but lucid enough to answer questions. I asked the basics. Did she know the man? How did he enter? Did she let him in voluntarily? Had he been stalking her? Her answers were short, clipped, terrified. No. 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 Then I tried a different question. Why did you say he didn't leave? She stared past me over my shoulder, toward the dark corner of the hospital room. I turned, nothing was there. But when I looked back, her face had drained of color. He was behind me, she whispered. When you pulled me out of the apartment. When the paramedics lifted me. He was crouched right behind me, like he was riding on the gurney. Like he was waiting to get closer. I felt ice crawl down my spine. What did he look like? I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slowly. That wasn't a man. I waited. She repeated, voice breaking. That wasn't a man. That ended the interview. She refused to speak anymore, curled in on herself and cried silently until the nurse asked me to leave. For what we found later. Evidence analysis came back strange. No fingerprints. Not on the window. Not on the bed frame. Not on the floor. Not on the closet door. Not even on the victim's skin where he grabbed her. No fibers. No hair. No DNA of any kind. The blood in the room? All hers. The scratches on the walls? Too high for her to have made while restrained. And the most disturbing detail. Multiple officers reported hearing movement in the apartment after the suspect's supposed escape, yet thermal scans, motion sensors, and drone sweeps found absolutely nothing. The department filed the case under attacker unknown, likely fled on foot. But internally? Among the people who were actually there? Nobody believes he fled. We believe something else. 5. My final note, off the record. I didn't include this in the official report. But you asked for my full testimony, so here it is. 2 nights after the incident, I woke up at home around 3:12 a.m. Not from a dream. Not from a noise. But because my bedroom door, my closed bedroom door, opened on its own. Slowly. Quietly. The exact way it opened in that girl's apartment. I stared at the darkness, waiting to see a silhouette or figure. There was nothing.